another exciting episode of ZoeTv. And as you can see, I am without a co-host. But I think we're going to manage because I got an amazing guest who's going to kind of be my co-host. And we're going to talk about her life. We're going to talk about Glencroft. We're going to talk about Cruise Week. We're basically in the middle of it. This week is filled with so much fun and adventure and all things that summer should be. Vacations, relaxations, cruising. I think before we get into our guest and before we talk about Cruise Week, I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the fact that our neuropathy program that our guest is into, and we're going to talk about, is ending here in the next couple weeks. So if you are interested in taking part in the next phase, in the next iteration of our neuropathy program, you have to call and sign up. We already have a waiting list going. So if it is of any interest to you to start, and it's going to be in July, it's going to be towards the end of the summer for the 6 weeks, please reach out. We'd love to have your name on there and walk you through what that looks like. And with that, I'm going to start. We are joined by Marie Langan, who is a relatively new resident on our campus. Marie is involved in the neuropathy program, this version of it, and just full of adventuresome stories. I have got to know her very well with our time together over the last 4 weeks. And so, Marie, first off, thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
I want to start by, and we usually do this, give us a little backstory of where you came from, how you ended up at Glencroft, and then we'll get into all your work and what you did, but where are you from?
I'm originally born in Cohoes, New York, which is a town of about 20,000 people. In upstate New York. It's about 9 miles east of Albany, where the Mohawk and the Hudson River join.
Okay. Small town.
Small town. Lived there until I was about 17, and then my parents moved to Connecticut.
Okay.
So I left and went to Connecticut, and there I lived for 35 years, doing different things, getting married, having babies, and my marriage broke up after 11 years, and I was there with 3 kids. I had not completed high school because I wanted to get out of the house and go to work.
Okay, well, that was my first. Okay, so at 17, were you ready to graduate? I mean, you were
No,
on the.
no.
Okay, so what happened with the high school world?
Well, I just turned 17 and said I'm not going back.
Okay.
And in New York State, you could do that at 17.
Wow, you could make that executive decision for yourself.
Right.
Wow.
You didn't have many choices, but that was one of them.
So 17, you said no more?
No. I couldn't cope with going to school, coming home, and having to be my mother's maid and housekeeper and babysitter.
Oh, my goodness.
So we moved to Connecticut, and my mother said, well, you can't go to work right now because we need you home. I am having surgery, and it's going to be 6 weeks recovery, so you have to stay home and take care of your brothers. I had 2 younger brothers. One was 6 and the other one was 4. I also had an older brother who left at 17 and he joined the Navy. But the Navy wasn't an option for me. So anyway, and I have a sister. She is 2 years younger than I. But she was busy going to high school. So my mother let her out and I got the full load of taking care of the 2 boys. But anyway, time went on and I met my husband and I got married. And had 3 children, like I said. Didn't complete anything in my education.
Yeah.
Went to work in a jewelry store.
Okay.
As a sales clerk, gift wrapper. I worked in the watch repair department where I would solder gold charms onto bracelets and silver charms onto bracelets.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. And they were
was it like a mom and pop jewelry store? Was it a
no,
chain or what was it?
He was it was privately owned by one man. His name was Bill Savitt. And
this was in Connecticut?
This is in Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut. He was probably the biggest jeweler in the city.
Wow.
And later on, I heard he had to close the store because his health wouldn't allow him to keep running it.
Okay.
But it was quite an education to meet with people that were well educated and interested in helping me. He offered me the opportunity to go to watch repair school, and I had just gotten married, and watch repair school was in New York City.
Oh.
And my husband wasn't going to go to New York City.
No.
So I had to say no.
Ah.
But then, as I said, I went on and had 3 children. That marriage fell apart, and I was working at Milton Bradley Toy Company as a inspector of quality.
Oh my.
So every game that came out of Milton Bradley had to have been inspected by an inspector. You just had to make sure that all the parts were there.
Wow.
Yeah, it was big.
Wow.
And
So where was it? Where were you doing that at?
Milton Bradley was located in East Longmeadow, which is right on the border of Connecticut and Massachusetts.
Okay.
And I lived in Enfield, Connecticut, which was also the border town. Wow. All 3 of my children were born in Massachusetts because the Massachusetts hospital was closer
Okay. All right.
than going
you.
to Hartford Hospital.
All right. So I've got a lot of questions on Milton Bradley. So what did a day look like for you? Do you sit in a room and just look at games all day?
No. The day started with taking a crew. The day started for me by sitting down and setting up a line. A line would be a box machine at the beginning.
Okay.
A lead person who would take that first box off the machine and put it on the tray, on the conveyor belt. The next person in line would put in a piece of cardboard that held some of the parts. Next person would put in a part. Another person, and it'd be 15, maybe 20 people down the line putting in a different piece.
Now, what year would this have been?
1973.
73. What was a hot game in 73? You talking Monopoly? Is that Monopoly?
No, Parker Brothers is Monopoly.
Parker Brothers.
For us, it would be the Game of Life.
Game of Life.
Yeah.
Who did Risk?
Have no idea.
So you had Milton Bradley and then Parker Brothers. Did you get in the inner workings of that feud?
No. Mr. Bradley was not into fighting with anybody. He just went his own way and did his own thing.
Did you know him?
No, he never came to the factory. But I worked with a lot of very interesting people. One of the funny things was that Lucille Ball was promoting one of the games, and she came to the factory.
Oh.
And she was on, like the little golf carts that we have here. We had those kind of carts in the factory to get around. And they were showing her around, and I asked her for her autograph. And she gave it to me.
Did she?
Yeah, and it was so thrilled. So next day I told my daughter I had gotten, because I worked nights. I worked from 2 in the afternoon to midnight. And I told my daughter I had her autograph, and she said, "Can I take it to school? Can I take it to school?" And she did. And it never came home.
It never came back.
Never came home.
Oh my goodness.
No.
So she came to the factory though.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. But the line had to run, and I would have my little go-kart. Mine wasn't electric though. I had a pedal, so it was a tricycle with a basket on the back. And I'd pick up a game off the conveyor belt, check it over, and make sure that it was correct. Then I would write my initials on it and the date, and I'd put it in my basket.
Certified basket.
Right. That was
that would be your routine.
That would be my routine, and there might be 12 different lines running at the same time.
But they all had to end up on your table in your eyes, certified with your signature.
I had to make sure that everything was in those boxes. And if it wasn't, then I had to stop the line and have them unload the skid full of boxes to see where we lost the pieces.
Wow. So how many of you were there in that one factory? I assume they had multiple factories?
They had multiple factories, but no, they did not. They had one huge complex.
Okay, so how many of you certifying?
There were 3 of us
Okay.
that worked the night shift. I don't know how many worked during the day.
Gotcha.
I didn't work during the day. So, because it was easier for me to work at night and have my husband take care of the kids.
Yeah.
But then when he chose to leave the house, I was left without a babysitter. So I went to my boss and I told him I had to leave. And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I don't have any babysitter. I can't. I can't get a high school kid to stay to midnight, you know." And he said, "Well, we're going to be doing a mother shift, 9 to 3. Are you interested?" I said, "You call me, I'll be there." So when the shift opened, I went to work. And now, when you were an inspector, you worked all year long.
Okay.
When you're just on the lines, you only work until Thanksgiving. At Thanksgiving, the shop shuts down, and it doesn't reopen until February.
Wow.
Because that's the time when they're going to redo all the machines, make sure
Yeah,
everything's right,
sure.
set up all new lines, whatever new games are coming, and all of that. So as an inspector, you would just be in there working with them, saying, well, no, this can't go that way. You have to do it this way, or whatever.
Makes sense.
So when I got laid off, I went to the state and said, I can't work anymore. And they said, why? And I said, because the shop is shut down until February. And the lady said, well, what are we going to do with you? Let me see. There's a work incentive program. And work incentive is, they did then call it WIN, W-I-N, Work Incentive Program, WIP.
Okay.
But anyway, she said, all you need is your high school diploma and you can get blah, blah. And I said, I don't have my high school diploma. She says, you're sitting there talking to me like this and you're telling me you don't have a high school diploma? I said, I left school. She said, how much education do you have? I said, I could only credit my freshman year because I quit just before I took my finals on my sophomore year. She said, you got to get your high school diploma, baby. If you get your high school diploma, I'll get you into this program. So I said, okay. So I went to the library and there's a book. It's about this big. It looks like a Wagner's dictionary, you know. How to take your GED.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh.
Brought it home. My children went with their dad for visitation on Sunday, and I was sitting there reading, and reading. My neighbor next door came in, and she said to me, Marie, what are you doing? I said, I'm studying for my GED. She says, how can you study for what you don't know? I said, I never thought of it that way. She says, Marie, go take the test. And if you fail it, then you go study what you failed.
Right.
I mean, you don't even know what you don't know. I said, all right. So I went and took the test, and I passed them all.
Oh my gosh.
So then I was ready to go to the school.
So then you went to WIP.
Yep. And we had an 8-week crash course. We worked 8 hours a day, and they threw everything at us. Environmentally, we were going to be what was called maintainers. We were going to work for the state of Connecticut.
Okay.
And we would go out in the field, and if there were any stream, we had to walk to its the way where, I'm sorry.
I got you.
We had to go up to where it originated.
Sure.
And then follow it downstream to look for any change in the water.
Oh.
Okay?
Okay.
And this was when they were doing a lot with the Clean Water and Clean Air Act back in the
Got it.
70s.
All right.
And so we were all psyched about this. We also had to learn how to treat sewage. The sewage water that came into the sewage treatment
Okay,
plant. We had
okay.
to learn how that worked so that we could understand better what we were doing. I was in a class of 30 people, and I came in third. So I was so psyched. Here I was, this drop-out-of-school kid, you know. And
Yeah.
one of the girls with us had 6 credits needed to get her bachelor's degree.
And you're hanging mentally, everything, no
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, and when we completed school, the state had cut the budget. The federal government was going to pay our salaries for 1 year, but they wouldn't pay for the incidentals. That would be your medical insurance, your traveling, your clothes, any protective gear that you needed, and a desk and and a vehicle to get out in the fields and all that. So the school people went out asking different towns if they would hire environmentalists. That's what we were called. And the town of Manchester, Connecticut said, yes, we'll take 6 of them. So they took one girl who had a lot of chemistry background and put her in the sewage treatment plant.
Okay.
And she was a chemist there where she would be sure that all the water was coming through clear
Okay.
as it was supposed to. And the other 5 of us went in as what they called environmental maintainers. We learned how to do housing inspection, restaurant inspection,
Wow.
daycare inspection, sewage, septic system installations, well installations. And we had to know how it was supposed to be done and what the workers were doing, if they were doing it right.
Wow.
So
you
and-
got versed on a lot of aspects and a lot of code and a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
wow.
And then the next year, the 5 positions were going to be cut back to 2.
Okay.
So we each had to compete for the 2 positions. I got one. So I stayed with the town for the next 3 years.
My gosh.
And I loved my job. I liked what I did. I had some scary experiences. One of the things I had to do was to take sample jars out to at least 3 feet from shore
Okay.
in the Hockanum River.
Okay.
Now, the Hockanum River is misnomer because it's more a brook than it is a river. So anyway, but you can't see in the water. The water is so mucky, you can't see. So, and this is in February. So I'm walking out. I got fireman's boots up to my hips, and I'm walking out, and I got my bottles, and I'm ready to dip them in because you have to go in and go down at least 3 feet
Okay.
and bring up because you don't want the top surface water
Right,
that's
I
moving.
gotcha.
You want the down, bring it up. And as I went to go down,
Uh-oh.
the bank underneath me gave way. I went under the water, and I'm down there holding onto these 2 bottles, and it's like, okay, what are you going to do now? My boots have now filled with water.
Goodness me.
So it's like, I can't stay here. I'll drown. You jerk. You jerk. You can swim. You know you float. So let go of the stupid jars and move. So I let go of the jars, and I actually got out of the boots.
Okay.
And
Floated up.
swam to the top and swam to shore. And my coworkers, there were 2 other coworkers with me, and they were there, and it was like, where the hell did you go? I said, underwater, what do you think I went? And they said, oh, God, it's freezing. I said, yeah, tell me about it.
Oh, my goodness.
I had on a wool pea coat,
Okay.
so that is wool. When
Yeah.
that gets wet, that's
Right.
heavy as
It's
dickens.
heavy. Yeah.
So anyway, they got me into the car. I got back to the office, and our director of health was a woman, and we happened to be about the same size structurally, except she was about a foot taller than I.
Okay.
So she said to me, I got clothes that'll fit you. Stay here. So I was there shivering, you know, and she comes back with clean clothes, and she says, you're going to go across the street to the fire department. You're going to go take a shower. But you got to wait for the chief. The fire chief don't want you going in the firehouse
Right,
until the
right,
chief is
okay.
there. So the chief came in, clear it out, get out of there, get out. And then sending all the men out of the lounge area so I could get in and take a shower. So I took a shower, put on the clean clothes, and then she sent me home.
Oh, my gosh. What a story. Well, you've seen a lot then.
Yeah.
And then somehow, flash forward, you end up in Arizona.
Well, yeah, I did. But in there, I joined the Connecticut Association of Housing Code Enforcement Officials. It was a way to touch base with other cities and other towns, because there may come a day when I want to work somewhere else.
Yeah.
I may not want to stay here.
Sure.
And this way, I got to meet people who I could talk with, who are on the same level. Being a housing inspector is very different than being a building inspector. A building inspector looks at the new construction and does it meet the right code. A housing inspector has to look about the sanitation of the house and that the old plumbing is still working and not poisoning people,
Right.
and that the sewage is not being
You have a different
discharged.
eye to see everything.
Yeah, totally different. So I went to a code enforcement official meeting, and one of my coworkers, who was also a woman, her name was Josie Forte, she and I were the only woman at the meeting. Everyone else were men. And they asked us where we were from, and we said Manchester, and they said, oh, wow, we haven't seen anybody from Manchester in years. And I said, yeah, well, it's understandable. But anyway, and then we enjoyed the meeting. They talked about different housing issues that they were having around the state, and we didn't have them, but we could see how they could create a handicap for you, you know. So we left, and 2 weeks later, they only met once a month. 2 weeks later, I get a call from the nominating committee chairman saying, I want to put your name in for secretary. Are you willing to do that? I said, now wait a minute, Jim. You're putting me in for secretary because I'm the only woman that walked through the door? I mean, give me a break. I'm not that naive. And he said, no, Marie, you speak well. You know what we're looking for. I think that you would learn by being the secretary what the association is about. And then you could help foster it.
Okay.
And I said, oh, well, I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. So, all right, you can nominate me. Well, I got elected secretary. Then I got elected president. Then I got elected president again and again, 3 years.
Wow, good for you.
as president. Then I went to treasurer and eventually on the board of directors. This is over the course of probably 15 years.
Okay.
And so I was really involved with the code enforcement officials. I've got several trophies at home from my work with them. And it's in my brag room. I've got a brag room.
You got everybody does.
Yeah. And then I was getting older, and I'm in my 40s, and it's like, I am so tired of climbing stairs. You know, you go to do an inspection on a 3-family house, you have to go down the stairs in the cellar,
It's work.
upstairs, up 2, up to 3, down to down. And you do 4 or 5 of these a day,
Worn out.
you are. You're worn out. And my knees were what were killing me at the time. So I looked to see if there was something else around. And what had happened in the early 80s was that the state of Connecticut implemented a housing court. This court would only deal with housing issues, disputes between tenants and landlords who weren't taking care of the property and were being prosecuted for it. So they had what they called a housing specialist. And what the housing specialist did was she negotiated between, or he, there were men as well as women, one of the few non-discriminatory jobs. They negotiated between landlords and tenants and tried to resolve whatever the dispute was. Most times the tenants were being evicted. And sometimes the landlord only wanted his rent money. He didn't have a problem with the tenant, but he can't afford to support the building if he wasn't getting the rent. So if we could work out an agreement where they could repay the back rent and keep the rent current, then he'd be willing to reinstate them. My success rate when I left 14 years later was at 96%.
Oof. Well, I tell you, we only got a few minutes left, and I want to flash forward because I
Okay.
think we could have a whole other episode on more of the code doc.
Okay.
I think it's fascinating. But when did you get to Glencroft?
I got to Glencroft in January of this year.
January. So you just came in this year.
Yes.
Where were you living right before Glencroft?
I had my own home that I bought when I came out from Connecticut.
Okay.
I retired from state service in 1997 and came to Connecticut. I came to Arizona and bought a house. And I was living there with my teenage daughter. She then went into the Navy, so then it was just me.
Okay. So you got out here and you chose Glencroft.
Because my neighbor across the street, Mildred Tom, she lives here in Court 4.
Okay.
She said, come over and visit me. You're going to love it.
Ooh.
I said, well, I will, Millie, but not right now. It's something I'd like to do, but I'm not going to do it. So then finally she said, Marie, you got to come over and visit. You got to see what I'm living in. So I went over, and she said, you know, and we get a free meal a day. I said, oh, well, that's nice. I won't have to cook.
Right.
And then she took me to dinner, and I don't know if I went to the Towers or Henry's. I don't know which one I went to, but the food was good. As good as any restaurant that I've been to in the Phoenix area. And she said, it's just wonderful here. And I said, yeah. And she said, you know, Marie, if you can't take care of yourself, they have what's called assisted living. Yeah. This is independent living, but they have assisted living. And I'm thinking, my father had dementia. My mother had dementia. My father died at 90. My mother died at 98. I know that I don't remember things. I know that my memory is slipping. Maybe I ought to think about going to Glencroft. Well, in September, October, early November, I had 3 auto accidents. I had a Buick Enclave, which is a big SUV. I hit a pickup truck that was in front of me because I wanted to turn out, and I didn't give myself enough room.
Okay.
And I hit his bumper, took out his tail light. That was the first one. The second one was I backed up into my driveway and took out my recycling bin. I had been backing up that driveway for 20 years.
Yeah.
You think I know where I was at?
Yeah.
I wasn't. I hit the trash can. Third one was I was driving along R Street going home. It was at night. And all of a sudden I heard bang, and I looked, and my side mirror was gone. I don't know what I hit. I went home. I didn't even park the car. I just drove it in the driveway and left it. went in the house. My grandson said, "You're home early. What happened?" I said, "I hit something." He said, "What?" I said, "I don't know." Then I told him what happened. He said, "You know you could have hit a person."
Yeah. That's enough.
Okay,
Yep.
that's it.
That's it.
Car went up for sale. I sold
Yeah.
the car.
Yep.
And then I said, I'm going to move. I was talking with my children. I have the four children. And I said, I don't know what to do. And my daughter said, "Ma, Cody is with you. He's 30 years old. He can take care of himself. He doesn't need you there."
Go to Glencrop. Be safe.
Right,
All
exactly.
right, and then you hit the ground running.
Yes.
January, you're involved in the neuropathy. We've got 30 seconds left. Give me your real quick take on the neuropathy program.
I love it. I like what it's doing to my body. I find I have bursitis in one hip, and I know I've done a good workout when I'm not hurting anymore.
Well, you're doing great in the pool.
Yeah, I love it.
You're doing
love
great
it.
on the hot-cold contrast with the ice and the heat. You're doing great in the speech class. I mean, every aspect of the program, you're thriving. I'm watching it.
I enjoy every bit of it. And I wish I had been able, I wish I can, write down what you do in the exercise in the pool.
Yeah.
So that I can continue to do those on my own.
We'll make sure you know. But you are amazing. We are out of time. This half hour just flew. Kay really missed out because she loves housing code. This is like right in her wheelhouse. So she's going to be sad. But we'll have you back because I think you have a lot more where that came from information-wise. It's fascinating.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I enjoyed doing it.
Very good.